Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello and welcome everybody back to another episode of Justice for All Now. I'm your host, Hena Zuberi, and today we will be discussing the effects of Islamophobia on the healthcare system in India and steps taken after the USURF report that just came out. And our guest today will be Zahir Adil, our Save India lead, Shujat Khan, who's the former president of the American Muslim Council, and hopefully we were expecting for Sheikh Obaid to join us again as well. Being Muslim in India has caused much vulnerability with the exponential rise in fascism. Yet, with the coronavirus pandemic, much uncertainty awaits the Indian Muslim minority. I wanted to share with you today an article that was published by the Time magazine on what has titled, "It was already dangerous to be Muslim in India, and then came the coronavirus." So this article reports back on the hashtags that had circulated after the news broke out late last March. Indian authorities had linked dozens of cases of COVID-19 to a Tablighi Jamaat annual conference that takes place in Delhi every year. So while many other such religious gatherings were taking place across the country, including one that had 40,000 participants. That was a Hindu gathering. There were Sikh gatherings. This was just normal. People in India had not taken the virus seriously up till then. And health officials were racing back to track down anyone who was in contact with this particular Islamic gathering. The Times reports that corona fears and religious tensions were already at a feverish pitch in India, and it didn't take long for the two forces to intermingle. Videos falsely claiming to show members of the Tablighi Jamaat spitting on police and others quickly went viral on social media. And ladies and gentlemen, if you've been watching this show, we had a deep discussion about the BJP technology cells, IT cells that spread out these messages in India last week. So please do refer back to that episode if you want to find out more about those BJP IT cells. And this made for a much already dangerous atmosphere for Muslims into something that was feverish. It was at the verge of bursting. Amir Ali, they quote an assistant professor of political science at the Jawaharlal Nehru University in Delhi, that Islamophobia has been transposed onto the coronavirus issue. India is the only country in the world where the virus has been weaponized against the Muslim community. Since March 28, tweets with the hashtag Corona Jihad have appeared nearly 300,000 times and potentially seen by 160 million people on Twitter, according to data shared with Time magazine by Equality Labs. So this is something that was one of the articles that came about talking about how this Islamophobia was being framed right from the onset of COVID-19 in India. There's another article by Foreign Policy that says, the title, "Islamophobia is making the coronavirus crisis worse." And again, I wanted to comment on this article that a lot of times these articles will focus on the word communalism, which I would really if you find that word being used to frame what is happening to Indian Muslims, I urge you to write to the reporter. I urge you to write to the editor of those papers and really educate them on the fact that when a state is perpetuating oppression against a minority, then you cannot keep terming it communal violence or communal strife. This is a minority. They do not hold power. we saw this in Burma, and again in this show, you will see us making ties because genocide, is a pattern. And the same ties were made when, and that, in Burma they would call it Buddhist and Muslim violence, but this is state sanctioned violence against a minority. The Delhi pogroms proved it. And so I really would urge that people, when they see articles like this, to point that out to the writers. This article was written by Ravi Agarwal. Really urge our readers to go in and make a comment, let the journalists know that communalism is not a term that should be applied to this situation. So this article goes on to talk about various. So my point is to show you guys that there has been a reporting across the board about this particular issue, about the fact that Islamophobia was one of the vessels, the lenses through which COVID-19 had been looked upon in India since March. So I'm going to invite my guests on, and so we can to talk a little bit about what transpired after that. Thank you, Zahir, for joining us.
Thank you for having me here.
And thank you, Dr. Shujat Khan, for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Our audience is familiar with Zahir Adil, who is our lead on the Save India campaign and is based in Massachusetts. Shujat, would you like to give us a brief background of your activism and how long you've been involved? Where are you based, and how long have you been involved in advocacy for the Indian Muslims?
Absolutely. Well, thanks for inviting me over. Happy to be here. This is a very important topic. Slight correction. In the past, I was the board member for 2 terms for IAMC at the national board from the state of Michigan. There is frequently happens there's some confusion with common last names. Hassan Khan is the president of IAMC and Shujat Khan. So it's happened before, but been in this type of work for about, I'd say 10 to 11 years, and come from the state of Michigan. I've got a family, lived in Detroit for about 20 years, and am well versed with the interfaith and the advocacy and the activist environment around the state of Michigan. Happy to be on the show again.
Well, thank you so much. And what part of India is your family from?
I was born in the city of Hyderabad in South India, and that's where my mom and dad, and both from my wife's side and my side, that's where we belong to.
Okay, so let's take this discussion forward. So Zahir, could you tell us a little bit about what else we've seen after March, especially specifically in the healthcare system in India?
As far as the healthcare system in India is concerned, some of the concerns that we have seen is in many of the hospitals, there have been now segregated wards where they are saying that Muslims will be kept in separate areas and Hindus will be kept in separate areas. Actually, it's not only that, it's Muslims in one area and non-Muslims in the other. So it's become just basically the segregation of the Muslim minority in India. That's one thing. Some hospitals have actually gone further, and they have said that they will not be treating Muslim patients if they do not come with a certificate that says that they are coronavirus COVID-19 negative. Just recently, in Ahmedabad, an ambulance was stopped by the police, which was carrying a child, just 3 years old, and they were not allowed to go further to take the child to the hospital. Now, while this was going on, other ambulances are going back and forth belonging to other ambulance services, and that's fine. Just happens that this particular ambulance that was stopped was part of the Jamaat Islami Hind it was being driven by a person who was visibly Muslim.
Mhm.
And you have to ask, if you see this happening over and over and over again, no matter what the police says, and they will always tell you, oh, we are being absolutely fair about it, but fair-minded people need to ask, what is the commonality? Why is this happening? And I'm hoping that more and more people will ask that question. Back to you, Hina.
Thank you so much. I wanted to show our guests this tweet put out by Rafi Ansari, and on April 4th, a pregnant woman was stopped in was refused to give medical attention at the Zenana Hospital in Bharatpur, and was told to go to Jaipur given her religion. And the local Bharatpur MLA, which is sort of like MLAs would be like their governors or the state representatives. Right?
The MLA would be like a parliamentarian for the state, the member of the legislative assembly of the state.
Okay. Okay. So that would be like our state reps or our state delegates. So I'm going to play this clip, and I'd like one of you to translate it.
कई जगह होकर आया हूँ, बॉर्डर चेक करके आया हूँ, कई जगह खामियां मिली हैं, लेकिन अभी अभी मुझे खबर मिली है भरतपुर से कि एक महिला, मुस्लिम महिला प्रवीणा, वाइफ ऑफ इरफान खान, निवासी बेला नगर, जो गर्भवती थी, उनको यहाँ से रेफर किया गया भरतपुर जहाना अस्पताल, और वहां कोई डॉक्टर मुनीत वालिया है, उन्होंने साफ साफ मना कर दिया कि आप मुस्लिम हैं, आप जाके जयपुर चेकअप कराइए। उनका वहां डिलीवरी हो गई और उस बच्चे की मौत हो गई। इससे ज्यादा शर्म की कोई बात नहीं हो सकती। एक धर्मनिरपेक्ष राज है, हमारी सरकार बहुत संवेदनशील है इन मामलों पर, और निश्चित रूप से उस चिकित्सा मंत्री जी को अभी बात करके उस डॉक्टर की कार्रवाई होगी। और ताज्जुब की बात फिर है कि यहाँ के जो चिकित्सा राज्य मंत्री वो यहाँ के एमएलए भी हैं भरत, उनको भी इस बात पर संज्ञान लेना चाहिए।
So, Shujat, would you like to translate that for us, please?
Sure, I'm going to make an attempt at it. So the speaker was that you saw in the video, he was relaying an incident that he came to know about, where a Muslim husband and wife, and the wife was expecting and near her term, about to give delivery. They were taken to a hospital, and the doctor, whose name was Puneet, he refused to treat her, or even see her, or diagnose her, and straight away because of her faith. So this was a faith-based discrimination that translated into denial of medical, basic medical need, medical emergency. So he referred both husband and wife over to a hospital in the main city. So these folks, I take it, were in a smaller city where there weren't other hospitals, so they were referred to the main city. And by the time they got there, and I believe the delivery happened, but it was a stillbirth due to medical complications. And the speaker that we saw in the video, he was speaking in Hindi. He goes on to say that this is a country that should not discriminate, especially in the medical needs of the patients. And he has discussed with some higher authorities and try to rectify and bring about some sense into the medical community that they should not be discriminating against Muslims. So in a nutshell, I'm sort of ad-libbing from what he said, but hopefully that's what all it was.
Okay. So one of the things that has been concerning for us is, as we monitor this, is that we have not seen any government officials themselves come out with statements against it, until recently. There was, for example, Prime Minister Modi went on and wished Ramadan Mubarak after there was a hue and cry from Arab intellectuals. So have you seen anything coming from the government itself that would point to that this is when incidents like these are occurring, that the government has come out and made some sort of statement or issued orders that everybody should be treated equally?
No, in my view, there hasn't been any solid statement from anybody higher up in the chain of command. This government has been termed as not the BJP government, not the government of India, but has been very frequently referred as the Modi government.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's the Modi government, then the Modi government should hear from Prime Minister Narendra Modi, but he has been, as usual, very silent and has not coaxed or not, requested or any basic communication to the voter base or the general population. Whereas in other cases, in other instances, he is pretty prompt, active on Twitter, active on other media, does a radio show, Man Ki Baat. There's various media that he uses, but has not taken 5 seconds to denounce this type of discrimination.
Mm-hmm. Zahir, do you have a comment on that?
No, I'd echo what Brother Shujat is saying. I have not seen anything substantial come out of the Modi government. In fact, even when the when the members of the Tablighi Jamaat were being attacked, he pretty much stayed quiet, although he had access to all of the media to say that look, these people were not spreading the virus, but he chose not to. The only time where there was a slight change in that stance was when there was a statement made after some Arab governments noticed that this is going on. But before that, absolutely none. And I believe that the statements made till now, they are very inadequate. There needs to be a lot more.
And traditionally, is that the case? Is that the case that when something like this happens to minorities, because every country is different, so I wanted to get the readers to know, listeners to know a little bit more about that. Is traditionally, does that happen that in India, when things like this occur, the home minister or the governors or the chief minister, someone at some level would make statements in support of people who have been attacked, oppressed, or been denied service? What is the culture there?
Sridhar?
I'll take that. Yeah. So again, this is a government for all the 1.1 billion people of the pluralistic society of India.
Mm-hmm.
There's no aspect of governance that is not covered by a department, by a cabinet minister, uh, by a responsible government figurehead. And ultimately, all power goes up to the governing party, the BJP, and then their elected chief of the party, who's going to lead the government, Narendra Modi. So there are diktats, there are directions, there are suggestions, there are plans. I mean, there's communication galore from every facet, whether it is, healthcare or law and order or immigration or trade, budget. There's communications coming out. So there is nothing that stops or hinders the ability of any of the departmental heads or the cabinet ministers or the IAS officers or the anybody in the central government that can speak on this. And there are quite a few popular, power centers within the government, people that are pretty well known and have had a long time in political life. There is absolutely nothing stopping anybody from saying, "Listen, folks, let's look at humanity. I mean, set your differences aside. The country is going through a crisis, and the last thing that we want is for people to indulge in this type of absolutely inhuman treatment of fellow citizens of India."
Definitely, and this is And then when that doesn't come from that, and they have the mechanisms like you're saying, and they also have this well-known IT cell. So if they wanted, they could have put that to use to curb the rumors, to make sure that all citizens were being treated equal, and so none of that is showing up either. And in fact, just the amount of vitriol has just increased in places, and things that are going viral are the ones that are like the video we saw of the vegetable, their gangs called the Hindu gang, I think they're calling themselves. Correct me if I'm wrong. And they're going around and asking people to, when they buy vegetables, to show their Aadhaar card so people can see if the vegetable vendor is Muslim or not. And they've been, and letting people know that, or asking them to wear the saffron turban so people will know they're Hindu and only to buy from them. And then a lot of us, I saw videos of or photographs of pictures of people dressed looking Muslim, and they're spitting on a vegetable, and then that's gone viral. So when there is, it seems like there is organized efforts being made to make sure that these sort of things that would upset the public go viral, whereas things that would calm them down are not being propagated. Zahir, what have you seen in regards to that?
Well, the group that you're referring to is, I think they identified themselves as the Hindu Army.
Hindu Army.
Yes.
Yeah, army. Yeah.
And although an army, it made and they have the full capability. And if this goes further, they could become an armed army, because at the back of it all, you have all of them come from this organization called the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, and that is a paramilitary organization. What's happening now is, given that the government is not very keen on speaking out against such attacks, I think there's just the amount of boldness in these people has increased so much that they're able to do this very, very openly. Unfortunately, we see that a lot of the people in India are probably intimidated. These are mostly good people, but they're just intimidated by the Hindu army and by the RSS goons, and so they are not taking a stand either. What's happened is that a lot of these small vegetable vendors, the people who just earn their living by selling things on the street, their livelihood has been hurt very, very badly. And they are not able to sell in many, many areas. And most areas are Hindu areas, so they are not able to make the kind of living that they would need to be sustainable. And I'm just afraid that this is just going to increase unless the government takes some very, very strong actions against the people who we can very clearly identify. I mean, one of them was an MLA of the BJP, and there's no action being taken against him. Take action against him. That will send a message to the others that this isn't something that is unacceptable in a so-called secular democratic India.
So I found the video, and I wanted to show this to our audience. If you guys would give me a minute. Sharing screen.
कृष्ण तिवारी हिंदू आर्मी से बोल रहा हूँ, और मैं खड़ा हूँ एक हिंदू भाई की दुकान पे, जो सब्जी वाले के। मैं आपसे निवेदन करना चाहता हूँ और कुछ दिखाना चाहता हूँ। आप देख सकते हैं, ये इन्होंने भगवा अंगूठा पहन रखा है। ये जब तक भारतवर्ष कानून लागू नहीं करती है, जब तक कि आइडेंटिटी सभी सब्जी वालों के पास नहीं आ जाता है, तब तक हिंदू आर्मी की पहल ये है, और हिंदू आर्मी का निवेदन है और आपसे आह्वान है कि आप जो है हिंदू सब्जी वालों से ही सब्जी खरीदें ताकि आपको साफ सुथरी स्वच्छ सब्जी मिल सके। आज के डेट में जो तबलीगी जमात के लोग हैं वो पूरे भारतवर्ष में सब्जी वाला बन के और थूक और गंदगी मिला के और सब्जी बेच रहे हैं ताकि कोरोना जो है वो फैल सके। तो आप सभी से निवेदन है कि कोशिश करें, सभी सब्जी वालों से और दुकानदारों से निवेदन है कि अपनी दुकान पे झंडा लगाएं, भगवा झंडा लगाएं, या जैसे देखिए भगवा पगड़ी इन्होंने पहना हुआ है वैसे भगवा पगड़ी पहने ताकि पहचान हो सके। लेकिन आइडेंटिटी जो आधार कार्ड है वो जरूर देखें, आधार कार्ड देखना अनिवार्य है। वैसे हिंदू आर्मी की पहल लॉकडाउन के बाद ये होगी कि हर सब्जी की दुकान और हिंदू की जो दुकानें हैं उस पे हम भगवा झंडा लगाएंगे और उस पे जो है एक बैनर हम देंगे उनको जिसमें आधार कार्ड उनका चिपका होगा।
Wow. So basically, the Hindu nationalist organization, Hindu Army, asking the street vendor to wear saffron cloth to symbolize that the store belongs to a Hindu vendor and boycott all other vendors, Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, and Dalits. And I'd love your commentary on this. What strikes you about this video? I mean, when I watched it, it was what the pictures that we have seen from before the Holocaust, where Jews were forced to wear signs signifying that they were Jews, with like a segregation of society, or who can buy from where. This is what seems like the theme, that was a theme that kept coming to my mind.
Absolutely. This is something that is very, very similar, because the playbook, if I can use that word, of the Hindutva ideology is very much similar to the Nazi, the fascist ideology. This is no different. So what you're seeing is not new. It has been seen before in the world. However, unfortunately, it has been followed by tragic circumstances and events. So this seems like it's a precursor to something bad that's going to happen. But it is definitely an identity-based politics. BJP, while they were not in power through the first decade of this millennium, 2000 to 2000, I'd say 2004 to 2012, would scream off the rooftops saying that, the Congress party, which was back in power, was indulging in identity politics and how detrimental it was for the progress of the country. And here they are illustrating, and this person that is speaking on behalf of the Hindu army, this is what they're disenfranchising the Indian Muslims. And disenfranchising, and I think we need to understand some of the background. India is the third largest economy in the world. $2.7 trillion is the GDP. But the average per capita income of any Indian is roughly a little below $5 a day. So, and now further, if you compound that with the fact that the Sachar report, that Justice Sachar Commission revealed on the social economic demographics within India, that report clearly identified that Muslims, the economic and the education level of Muslims in India was even worse or inferior than the Dalits that are in India, the backward classes. So there has been a systemic abuse over the years of avoiding jobs to Muslims in government institutions, of discriminating against on many aspects, which resulted in 2009, 2010, when the report came out, saying that the per capita income of any Indian, whether it's without any regard for religion, if that is below $5, then the Muslims, you can imagine, if they're being stated in the report as being much, much inferior than the average income. So what this person in the video is doing is that they're basically taking away the livelihood of this sole breadwinner, that a person that has not been given any kind of reservations in whether educational institutions or government institutions or anywhere, any Muslim vendor, any person that has, as a matter of last resort, resorted to. I mean, nobody likes to sell vegetables on the street. I mean, this is something that you not choose to, but it's economic conditions that have been imposed on you, and now for them to step up and take away. I mean, what about the family? What about the small kids? Where are they going to go and get medication if this livelihood is being taken away with this false propaganda of Muslims being treated what used to be like in the olden days, where they would have, when medicine did not understand what some of the diseases were, like leprosy and all, and they would have different colonies outside of the cities, as history writes in the books, and we read it today. This is a similar aspect of basically isolating, ghettoizing Muslims, which happen to be data-driven facts that they are, the lowest of the lowest on the totem pole of the economic condition, and then it is basically going to prove to be the last economic straw that the Hindutva ideology wants to do, and then frustrate a large amounts and sections of the population by doing exactly what they're doing. This is a provocation that basically you keep pushing, you keep poking somebody in the eye until what time, and then when people are. My appreciation, my hats off to the Muslims and the patience that they're showing in these circumstances, and this has been taught to us by our Prophet ﷺ, is that Islam is a religion of peace, and we have to maintain and persevere and have sabr, as is commanded by our Prophet and by the Quran. And I think that's what the Muslims of India, especially those that are being subjected to these type of treatment, are being given. But this is abhorrent. You come in and you take away someone who earns $2 a day, and they've got to feed their whole family with it, not just feed, but medical care. I mean, there are so many aspects that it just hurts deep inside to know that someone is going to have, the last resort of, revenue be taken away from them with just these false allegations.
And the allegations that they were talking about was they were, but coming back to that whole coronavirus jihad hashtag, is that the people are going out and on purpose spreading the disease, and are these are dirty people, and they're different from us. Sort of like, and this is very strange to hear from a land where Hindus and Muslims have been living together side by side for centuries. So, Zahir, I wanted to get your take on this as well.
Actually, I think I did touch upon that a little bit before Brother Shujat spoke, and yeah, I mean, this is something deeper. I mean, this is one instance, but what they are trying to show is that Muslims on the whole are not going to be as clean as Hindus, and so the majority population should not be trusting them, should be staying away from them, and all that will lead to further marginalization. With further marginalization, even though the Sacher report said that the Muslims are already probably at the bottom rung of the ladder, it's going to get much worse. So I think a plan here might be for Muslims just to be employed at the lowest of the low levels, doing the dirtiest jobs, the ones that nobody else wants, and supporting the higher ups up in the hierarchy to live the lives that they want without any fear from the Muslims, from the Muslim community.
Interesting. Now, one thing that I wanted to touch on again is this, the Hindu army. Is this something that you guys grew up hearing? Had you ever heard this term before? We read a lot about saffron terror. We've seen saffron terror in Burma, where monks themselves became the vehicle which was used to perpetuate genocidal intent on the Muslim community. So, and it's used to describe acts of violence motivated by Hindu nationalisms in the Indian context or in the Sri Lankan context, usually perpetuated by members or alleged members of the Hindu nationalist organizations like RSS or Abhinav Bharat. The term comes from the symbolic use of the saffron color by many Hindu nationalist organizations.
So, to be honest, I had not heard of a separate group called the Hindu Army. The Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, the RSS, is of course very well known. They've been in existence for a long time. But this is new, and this may be one of the fringe groups that are popping up, or just like the cow vigilante, people took it upon themselves to create their own small groups where they will go and protect the cows. So maybe this is something new that's coming up. But if Shujat has something to add to that, uh, maybe he's heard of it before.
Yeah, when I left India when I was about 21 years, and we had quite a few friends, neighbors, family friends. We were totally interfaith. We lived in a majority non-Muslim area, and we would have, every festival we would have dishes and food sent over from our neighbors, and we would send food over, over there. They would come over, meet my grandma. I'm talking of when I was probably in my early teens, and our elders would go over. So this, I mean, and I'm not talking of one city or one neighborhood. This was a very, very pluralistic, accepting, tolerant, and a very understanding society. But the poison of religious discrimination has been slowly dissolved, and it has been, the concentration of that has gone up every time. But this is something that absolutely was not foreseen. Now, if I may add, there is an attempt. I mean, when there's law and order breakdown and there is no clear uh, source that can go out and basically apply the Indian Penal Code and basically call out people on the crimes that they're committing, similar to this one, because there is an Indian Penal Code, a section, I should say, that's what it's called in the IPC, which deals with the promoting religious enmity. I mean, there are laws on the books today.
Everything okay?
I think he might have gotten disconnected. But I think what he was trying to say that there are laws on the books. Oh well, this had to come at the right time. So there are laws on the books, but um, but people are not applying those laws. I don't think the government has enough. They don't see it as a benefit to themselves politically to go after the people who are perpetrating these acts of violence, because let's be honest, just as in this country, Modi depends upon a certain group that thinks like him, that seems to like him, and he wants to be there for the third term, which is actually allowed in the Indian context of government. So there's just no. It's not ability. They have the ability to apply the law, but they just don't want to.
So I want to share something personal. So my uncle. Well, let me start with my grandfather. My grandfather was killed by Hindus. He was poisoned to death, and my father was about 7 years old when this happened, and my grandfather had gone back to the family lands, and they had moved into the city for him to go to university, and he was a attorney, and so they lived in Kanpur, but they were from part of UP. And so he went back to check on the lands, and the first time he went back, they asked him that he needs to, sort of leave, and that they didn't have what they needed from him. So he went again to check again, and then his dead body came back. And then even my uncle, they used to live in Ranchi, Bihar. and he was an engineer there. And at that time, we never thought of it as attacks because of faith. But now looking back at this entire thing, and he was attacked with this gigantic sword, and as he was riding his motorbike, on the back of his on his back, he was his back was slashed as he was going, and it was neighbors. It wasn't like people. So there were some lovely neighbors who had been with them, and but this particular person. And now, like when we discuss these things, even within our family, and we think about like your lens, and you have to really stop yourself from looking at through those lenses, because it's like, how long will it, and where will this end? Like, if those weren't those feelings, or that hatred was not um solved or worked on intentionally, and it did not end, then where will, and now 40 years later, 50 years later, 60 years later, where will this go? And that is what is so terrifying about this, from a personal point of view. But so this is where, like, those folks in the diaspora like you, what do you, and I know a lot, and we talk to a lot of people who are in the diaspora who have who want to do more, because they feel like they're in that position to be able to do more. What are your suggestions, especially now when such a large a watchdog such as the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom has, through their research, through their the work that and they have done, has declared that India has gone back to a spot that it was 14 years ago, and has put it back on the list, and determined that the State Department should also put it back on the list of countries of particular concern. Um, what what's next for those of you here who can make a difference?
That's a good question. Well, I think the best thing that we can do here, as in the diaspora, is to continue to let people know what's happening, and to make especially the Hindu Americans over here, to let them know that this is something that does hurt us. We have grown up with a lot of them, and I am always the ever hopeful sort of person. When I was growing up, I had a lot of different friends. I never had a problem with them. I do have a person over here that I know in the Massachusetts, in the Boston area. He has absolutely no trust of any Hindu, doesn't matter who. The reason for that is that his cousin was killed with a sword, just as your grandfather was. His friend was killed in front of him. I think it was his cousin. Till
Man,
this very day, he has never
survived
ever.
the attack. I just want to clarify. My uncle at that point did survive the attack, but he was
Okay.
hospitalized. It was my grandfather that had been killed. But yes.
So this person's cousin did not. And to this very day, he tells me, Zahir, I like your work, I support what you do, but I don't think that's going to go anywhere. What he means is that from the point of view of having the Hindu and Muslim communities come together and live together, something that he doesn't believe in. But again, coming back to what we can do in the diaspora is we work the system that is here. So we have a system that is here. It's a democratic system. It is much more easier for lawmakers in this country to listen to you than it might be in India. You have a right to voice your opinion to your lawmakers. You have a right to at least try, attempt an op-ed into your local newspaper, a letter to the editor. Try and do that. So in this way, if you're not willing to do that, at least tweet. If you find something, retweet it. That's probably, there is a saying in Islam that if at the very least, if you see some bad things happening, take action to change it. But if you cannot take action to change it, speak about it. But if you at least cannot do that, at least hold a level of sympathy in your heart for it, right? Now, I'm going to take that a little further. Let's not just do the least needed. Go to the next step. It says speak about it. And there's right now with social media, it makes it very easy. Most of us are on Facebook. Write something, right? Something that's original. That makes a lot of difference because now your friends know that you took enough time to put some words together, to put your thoughts into words and to place it online. It makes a difference. The same thing with tweets. Instead of just retweeting, write something original that comes from your heart. It comes from your mind, but it also comes from your heart because there's emotion attached to it, right? And it's your emotion. Take the third step. Go get together with Justice for All. Well, if you, there are many other organizations, Indian American Muslim Council, that's fine. Take whichever organization that you're comfortable with. Go with their ask. Go to the congressman. Say that this is not something that India should be going down, and we need to let our State Department know that they have to put the recommendations made by the USERF into effect. They have to term India as a country of particular concern, not because we don't like India, but actually exactly the opposite, because we like India and we want it to be a country where everybody can live in peace together and to prosper all as one people.
That's profound. I, I'm just trying to figure out what else can be done from here to save and protect those that are over there. Aside from internal pressure that we can put on our own governments here, what else would you suggest that perhaps Indians and Indians themselves there could do, should do? Is Are you happy or satisfied with the level of organizing within Muslim groups over there?
Um, that's a good question. To be honest, I do not have enough data to give you a good answer to it. I am not. I am in touch with a few. Well, not in touch with them, but at least know of a few organizations that are trying to do something. There has been a lot of difficulty for a lot of Muslim organizations to bring court cases against people who have perpetrated some violence against the Muslims. There have been some cases that have been filed, but most of the cases in the past have not gone too well. That's the way that I understand it. I think there's a lot of frustration in the Indian Muslim community as to what can be done. Politicians, whatever few Muslim politicians are there, they are continually marginalized. So the future kind of looks very bleak for the from the Indian Muslim point of view.
Mm.
What we need to do is to really reach out to the good uh, the fair-minded politicians in India who are of non-Muslim faith. They need to add their voices, and then I think there can be a change in in the rhetoric from the BJP and in the actions that we are seeing on the ground. And I'm really hoping that will happen, but I'm not sure when it will. It has to be loud enough.
So we urge everybody right now on the screen, you can see the letters we have. I'm getting an echo and I'm wondering why I'm getting an echo. And I'd like people to take action. We have an action alert out, um, asking simply to asking your Congress people to ask the State Department to take the USERF report seriously, to make sure that all the recommendations that have been given are acted upon. Some of these recommendations are easy for the State Department to take immediately. For example, sanctions against Yogi Adityanath, the chief minister of UP, Uttar Pradesh, for his abhorrent and extremely oppressive policies and his words. So that is something that somebody, and you don't have to be Muslim, you don't have to be Hindu, you don't have to be an Indian to do this. Anybody who is concerned. This is the largest population of Muslims in the world aside from Indonesia. So what is going to happen if this atmosphere keeps getting worse if nothing is done. We, like as you saw today, and we will continuously keep showing you these things, and not because this is something that fans the flames, but particularly because this drives people into action. And people, anybody who is concerned about this, a concern about being able to stand up for a group of people, because if this doesn't end, this sort of these sort of policies or this sort of like attitude, if it doesn't stop, then we could be facing something that the world will regret. And so this is something that I really, really urge you guys. It takes all of 3 minutes to do this. And the next big ask is to meet with your Congress people, and relay your concerns, especially if you have family back in India and you're concerned about them and you're concerned about their safety. Then it is incumbent on you to make these calls and go and meet with your Congress people. I really encourage all of you to take these steps. I'm really sorry that we lost Brother Shujat. Inshallah, we will be calling him and making sure he's doing okay. And if anybody has any questions at this point, please do drop us comments and questions. We can take them. Otherwise, small action item: get your interfaith friends to sign it. Get your mosques to sign it, get your temples to sign it. Anybody who cares about justice and about the safety of this large, and it's not just the safety of Muslims, it's Christians, it's Dalits, it's other Hindu, under Hindu minorities. Once this becomes the norm, and it is increasing to become the norm, it will affect every level of society. So even Hindus who right now may not be affected, tomorrow, because they're not Brahmin or from the higher upper class, they will be affected too. Because if you look at what the plans are for a Hindu national state, go and study that. Go and take a look at that. What does that actually mean? What does that mean for a Kashtriya? Or what does that mean for someone who isn't in that higher echelon of society? So thank you so much for joining us today. We still have a few minutes, and we will see if we have any questions. And if we don't, then I'm going to say goodbye. And thank you so much for being here today and joining us. We have a new logo, as you can see right up here, and let us know what you think about it. And we're going to continue doing this. Send us show ideas. We have lots of things planned coming up, and reaching out beyond just the issues that we work on. So I hope you will keep on joining and listening and commenting. Thank you so much. Goodbye.